Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Season and Serve. My name is Melissa and I share seasonal living content here on my channel, and I cover everything from cooking with seasonal ingredients to gardening to decorating our home for the seasons and of course entertaining. Now today we are entertaining and also making some delicious recipes for Thanksgiving. And this year for my theme for Thanksgiving, I am doing a Canadian Thanksgiving. And I'm using lots of local and seasonal ingredients and putting a spin on really famous Canadian recipes from across the country. In the first video, I made some beautiful appetizers. I did little bannock bites. I did one with smoked salmon and Saskatoon berry jam. And the second one I did with a nice homemade cranberry chutney and some Boursin cheese. And that was absolutely fabulous. So if you haven't seen that yet, make sure to go back and watch that video. I will leave it linked above and in the description box below. But in today's video, we are making the main dish as well as 3 different side dishes. For our main dish, we're making a beautiful maple glazed turkey breast, which we're going to start by making first. And then for our side dishes, we are making these fabulous poutine potatoes. We're also making a beautiful mushroom and sage stuffing. And then we're making these beautiful warm sautéed Brussels sprouts with kale and some crispy shallots on top. So if you want to see how I make this beautiful maple glazed turkey breast and all the other side dishes for my Canadian Thanksgiving, just keep on watching. All right, so for our maple glazed turkey breast, I have a beautiful turkey breast roast here. I got this from our butcher. I go to Kale's Butcher here in Burnaby. It is pretty close to our house, which I love, so we go up there all the time. But I got my butcher to take the turkey breast off of the turkey, and then he wrapped it to make a turkey breast roast. So to start this recipe, I'm going to take this out of the package, and I'm going to do that off screen because I know there's going to be blood and things we don't like to see on YouTube here. So I'm going to take this out of the package, and I'm going to put it on my baking tray. For my baking tray, I'm not using a whole half sheet pan. This is just a quarter sheet pan, and this will fit the turkey breast perfectly. All right, so this is what our turkey breast is looking like. The turkey breast roast is probably my favorite thing to cook for Thanksgiving. I'm not a very big dark meat person, and roasting a whole bird, you know, it's fun and it tastes good, but it is a little bit of work. So doing a turkey breast roast on its own is super easy, and I feel like it's just impossible to mess up. So we have that all ready. Now we're going to put that off to the side, and before we start touching all the turkey and getting the juices everywhere, I'm just going to prepare some things for the baking tray. So I have an onion here, and I'm just going to slice it into rounds, and I'm actually going to put it on the base of the turkey. And this will help to flavor the turkey and prevent it from burning when it's touching the tray. So let's get this sliced up. Okay, so our onions are all set underneath the turkey breast, just like this. And again, that is just going to kind of perfume the turkey and give it lots of amazing flavor and prevent it from burning on the tray. Now, I'm just going to take some thyme. This is the only herb we're adding to this. Normally for Thanksgiving, I do like thyme, sage, a little bit of rosemary. What else? Thyme, sage, rosemary. That's pretty much the trifecta. But this year I'm just using thyme because I don't want the flavors of the herbs or the onions to really overpower the maple glaze, because this turkey is all about that maple glaze. So we're going to add this just kind of tucked again under the turkey to give it a little bit of a perfume. Now at this point, we're basically almost done with this recipe, which I love. So the next step is to take a piece of paper towel, and we're going to just dry the turkey breast off because we want the toppings to adhere to it. And this also helps it get nice and crispy as well. Beautiful. Toss on the garbage and wash my hands. So now I'm going to season the turkey up, and we're going to keep the seasonings very simple. Again, it is all about that maple glaze that we're going to add near the end of the cooking process. So we're just going to add salt and pepper. That is it. That's all we need for this recipe. So we're going to crack some pepper over the top of the turkey, and then we're going to add some salt. I'm not going to do too much salt because I am using salted butter, which is the next ingredient that's going on here. So we're gonna keep it pretty chill on the salt, I think. Now the last step is to add some butter, and I have just under a quarter cup of butter here. So we're gonna take this, it's at room temperature, it is extremely soft, which is what you want for this recipe. And we're gonna get in there with our hands and kind of rub the butter all over the turkey. Final ingredient is some olive oil, and the olive oil will help prevent the butter from burning. So we just need about a tablespoon drizzled all over the top. You can see here, I didn't do like the best job fully coating the turkey breast with butter, and that's because there was still a lot of moisture in the turkey breast. But as long as you get it on most of the turkey, especially on the top, it'll kind of drip down and coat the sides, so you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we're gonna bake this turkey breast at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's kind of a low temperature, but for a turkey breast, you want that because that's how it stays nice and juicy. And the cooking time will vary depending on how big your turkey breast is, but in general, it will be about 15 minutes per pound. So for me, I kind of estimate the amount of time depending on how heavy the turkey breast is or how much it weighs, but ultimately it really comes down to using a thermometer. And the turkey breast will be really close to done at 160 Fahrenheit. It is technically done at 165, but when you take it out of the oven, you tent it with foil, it'll continue to cook and it'll reach that 165. If you go over that, it is a little bit drier. It's not the end of the world, but we're gonna aim for 160. And in this goes, we're gonna put it on the center rack, and then we're gonna rotate it, every so often, just so it gets evenly brown on all sides. All right, turkey, see you in a couple hours. So next up, we're gonna make the maple glaze for the turkey, and the glaze only has 3 ingredients. So first, it's obviously maple syrup. We're using a delicious Canadian grade A maple syrup. I just get this from Costco and it's so good. So we're gonna do about 2/3 of a cup. So there's 1 and 2. We don't need too much because it is a relatively small-ish turkey breast. And we're gonna reduce it a little bit to kind of thicken it up, but we don't need too much glaze. Otherwise it'll be too sweet, and that's not my favorite. And then to kind of give it a little bit of depth and a little bit of smokiness, we're gonna add some Worcestershire sauce. And I'm just doing 1 tablespoon. And of course, if you want all the measurements and directions written down for you, it'll be available on my website, and I'll leave the link to that in the description box below. That goes for this maple glaze, that goes for the turkey, that goes for all the side dishes we're gonna make. I got you covered, don't worry. So that just adds a little bit of depth, a little bit of smokiness, and a little bit of color as well. For just that little extra hit of spice and a bit of smokiness, I like to use some smoked paprika. And this is so good. I just got a fresh jar, and it is like the best perfume ever. We got thyme perfume, we got smoked paprika perfume. It's beautiful. But this is relatively powerful, especially when it's fresh from the jar. So I'm only adding a 1/4 teaspoon in here. So we're gonna pop that in. Now the inspiration for adding the smoked paprika was I don't have liquid smoke. Liquid smoke is like so good, but I rarely use it. So smoked paprika does a good job. Just gonna swirl it together in the pot, get the paprika all kind of broken up. And then we're just gonna pop this on the stove. So I'm gonna cook this over medium for about 10 minutes. We want it to just reduce slightly. We don't want it to be super thick and really sticky, but we want it to reduce a little bit. And once it's done, we'll just keep it off to the side, and we'll be ready for when the turkey is almost done. Next, we're going to move on to making our mushroom and sage stuffing. And as you can see here, I have some beautiful mushrooms for this recipe. So during the fall, there are lots of mushrooms available, and one of the best varieties that comes into season is the beautiful chanterelle. These are super beautiful. They are really nice golden yellow color, which is perfect for fall, and they have such a delicious rich mushroom flavor. They are so good. I got these mushrooms from West Coast Wild Foods, and they grow mushrooms, they harvest mushrooms out in the wild, and they harvest and forage a bunch of other ingredients, and they make all these amazing products from it. But today in this recipe, we're using a combination of different mushrooms. I have some wild chanterelles, and then I also have some cultivated mushrooms as well. I have these beautiful oyster mushrooms. These are just stunning. And then there's also some cultivated shiitakes in here as well. So you can definitely use wild mushrooms like I'm using in this recipe, but if you also want to just use conventional mushrooms from the grocery store, definitely grab some cremini mushrooms. Those always taste good. And then oyster mushrooms as well. You can find them, I think, in most grocery stores now, but if you go to Asian grocery stores, they like always have oyster mushrooms. And of course, with mushrooms, especially wild mushrooms, you do want to give them a bit of a clean, just because they're obviously growing out in the forest, out in the wild, out in the dirt, and you just want to get all the dirt particles off. So I use this cute little mushroom brush. This is actually David's. I don't know how long he's had this, but we're just going to take the mushroom brush and just gently, just ever so gently, brush the dirt off the mushrooms. And I just brush it off the top there. Get under the gills as well if it's a little dirty, but be very gentle. And this takes, a little bit of time. So, definitely do this the day before. Clean all your mushrooms. You can even fry the mushrooms up the day before, which we're going to do next for this recipe. So you can definitely prepare this well in advance. But I'm going to go ahead and clean off these mushrooms. Then we're going to cook it with some celery and onion, get it all fried up, and then ready to mix into our stuffing. All right, so now we're going to chop up our mushrooms and our vegetables, and I'm going to start with the vegetables here. So I have 3 stalks of celery that I'm going to chop up, and then I'm going to use half of a yellow onion. So for the onion, I like to do fairly fine pieces, just because when you get a bite of stuffing, you don't want a really big piece of onion in there. You just want like a small little delicate bite of onion. I'm doing the same thing for the celery too. I'm going to make fairly small pieces. Again, the celery just kind of adds that little extra depth of flavor. Now that we have the onion and celery chopped, we're going to chop up our mushrooms. And you see I already done a little bit here just for the close-up shots. There's always like insane camera work that I have to do when filming. So I'm just taking the stalk off the shiitake because the shiitake stalk is fairly like tough. So we don't want to have that. So I'm just going to cut it up into 1 centimeter size pieces. And then for the oyster mushrooms, I had one that was really big that I cut up in the same way. But for ones that are like still pretty large, I'm just going to tear them in half. You can cut them with a knife, that also works. But I find just tearing them, especially when you get a bunch like this, just kind of tear them off the little bunch. They'll be perfect. And mushrooms are mostly water, so when we cook these, they will shrink up quite a bit. So if we do find any ones that are still a little bit too big for this recipe, then we can just cut them after they're cooked. Then I'm going to do the same thing for some chanterelles. These are a little bit too big. So I'm just going to take it and split it. I can smell the turkey cooking. It smells so good. Then when we add this to the oven, it's going to be game over. So now everything is chopped up. I'm going to go grab some sage from the garden, and then we're going to get to cooking our recipe. So now we're going to fry up our mushrooms and veggies, and I'm going to start with about a tablespoon of olive oil in the bottom of the pan. Then along with that, I'm adding a 1/4 cup of butter because it's Thanksgiving. So butter is cooking here over medium heat, and now we're going to add our celery and our onion. So we're going to cook that. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper, more pepper than salt, mainly because, again, I'm using salted butter, so I don't need to add too much salt. A little bit of salt in there. We're going to cook this for about 5 minutes, just until the edges of the onion are starting to get a light golden brown. All right, so our onion and celery are all nice and golden. So we are going to take this out of the pan, and we're going to reserve this in a bowl while we fry our mushrooms. So I like to start cooking the mushrooms off in a dry pan, just so it gets like that initial moisture out. And then I'm going to add some salt to draw more moisture out. And then we're going to cook it in a little bit more butter, a little bit more oil, again, because it's Thanksgiving. And then you'll know the mushrooms are done when obviously they're golden brown, but also when it's like a little bit quieter, if they're not sizzling as much in the pan. So the mushrooms have softened up quite a bit now. Now we're going to add our chopped sage, and we're going to mix that into the mushrooms. Okay, so the sage is smelling nice and fragrant. Now we're going to add our onion and celery back into here, and then we're going to mix it up to combine. But there we go. That is the filling, and then we're going to add the bread to it with some other ingredients, and it's going to be delicious. So let me show you how to do that. So I have my baking dish here, and we don't need to grease it or anything because so how much butter we put in there, it'll totally be fine. So we have that. And then I also have some bread cubes that I cut up yesterday and just left out overnight. I just put them in the oven just so pearl doesn't get all over them. But we're going to put some of this day-old air-dried bread into the bottom of the baking dish here. So we're going to aim for about 1/3 in here, just in the base. Just to cover the bottom, we have our mushroom filling. We're going to put half of this. Now the inspiration behind this recipe was mushrooms, and across Canada, mushrooms are pretty widely available. You can either get them cultivated or wild from the forest. There's so many different kinds of mushrooms available, so you can really mix it up and use whatever kind of mushrooms are locally available to you and just make it your own. I love it. That's like part of Canadian cooking, is just using local seasonal ingredients. So there's another layer of bread. We're going to put more mushrooms on top. Then we're just going to add the rest of the bread cubes right on top. You can kind of see the mushrooms already peeking through, but we got to make it look pretty. We got to make it look nice for Thanksgiving. So I'm just going to carefully place with clean hands some mushrooms and nestle them right in. All right, so that is the stuffing. And the final ingredient that's going to go onto this is some chicken stock. And this chicken stock adds lots of flavor to this, and it makes it nice and soft and juicy in the middle. I'm trying to avoid using the word moist, but you gotta make it moist. I'm sorry, it had to be said. And then our final step is to add some aluminum foil. That looks good. So the aluminum foil is going to keep the stuffing nice and moist, and it is going to cook in the oven. Again, you can just put it in, with the turkey at 325. Ideally, you would want 350, but this is pretty forgiving, especially when it is covered. So we're going to pop this in the oven for about an hour. Then we're going to cook it for an additional half hour, but we're going to take the foil off, and then it'll get nice and golden and beautiful on top. So let's get this in the oven. I'm so excited. And while we're at it, let's check on the turkey. That is the turkey so far. Whew, it is hot now. She's gonna go back in for quite a while, and I'll check it again after another hour. If I notice it getting too golden brown, I'll put a little bit of tin foil on top. All right, so now our turkey is pretty close to being done, and you can see in the bottom of the pan here all these delicious dark brown juices. And this is the secret to making our poutine gravy extra good. Very, very, very carefully pick up this tray. I'm going to use my oven mitts obviously because it's hot. I'm just going to pour the juices into this heat-proof container. That is all concentrated turkey flavor and onion flavor and thyme flavor, and we definitely have to add this to our gravy. I think that's pretty good. Woo! Did it. So I'm just going to tent this and put this back in the oven. And I'm just gonna wait for the fat to kind of separate off the top. You can see it already starting to separate there. And we'll add that delicious golden liquid at the bottom there to our gravy. All right, so we are going in for the second glaze of the turkey. I went to do the first glaze, but the camera didn't record, unfortunately. So I'm gonna show you the second glaze that we're gonna do here. You can see, just by it being in the oven, how much it has caramelized, almost burnt on the bottom. And that's why you don't want to glaze at the early stages, because the maple syrup will burn. So we're just going to do it at the end. And it smells super smoky too because of the smoked paprika we added, and is looking gorgeous. So you can glaze the turkey maybe 3 or 4 times just as it's coming up to temperature. So I kind of start it once it hits 150, and then every 15 minutes I'll take it out, glaze it, put it back in, glaze it, put it back in, and do it one more time. So it gets a nice, beautiful sheen on it, and it doesn't burn as badly. This is the final glaze. I'm going to put it back in just for 10 more minutes, and then it'll be done. I'll just tent it with foil and rest it on the counter. And RIP to this pan. Oh my gosh. The maple syrup really caramelized on the pan, but if you soak it, it'll come off. It'll be fine. It's also really important why we actually drain the turkey juices off before we glaze the turkey. First of all, I don't want a sweet gravy. That's kind of weird. And then obviously we also don't want these burnt bits in our gravy. 1, 2, 3, go. Pearl's a turkey, Pearl's a turkey, she's a turkey kitty. All right, so next up, we are gonna make our poutine potatoes, and this is obviously inspired by the famous Canadian dish poutine, which is from Quebec, and it is so good. And I really thought that this is actually a very good recipe for Thanksgiving because we already make potatoes, we already make gravy, so what's the harm in adding a couple cheese curds and calling it a poutine? And I also really like for the potatoes, instead of mashing them, having to boil them, drain the water, all of that, that's kind of a lot of work. We just cut these up, roast them in the oven, and that's it. Let the oven do all the work, which is wonderful. So we're going to prepare our potatoes first, and I have 3 large Yukon Gold potatoes. And all I'm going to do is just cut the potatoes into wedges. You can cut it into fry shapes as well, but I kind of like the wedges because it's pretty substantial and it holds a lot of gravy, and of course the cheese curds. Yeah, the cheese curds, Pearl. So when I make fries, what I like to do is just drizzle the parchment paper here with a bit of oil so the bottom gets some oil on it and gets nice and crisp. And then we're just going to arrange these onto the baking tray that I've precariously balanced over here. Also, I've taken the stuffing out and the turkey out as well. Those are both resting. And I've cranked up the oven temperature to 425 to get a really nice crispy crust on these potatoes. Bake them at a very high heat and they turn out great every time. All right, then all we have to do is just season it with salt and pepper. And I do quite a bit of salt because potatoes need a lot of salt to have some sort of flavor. So I'm gonna add lots of salt here. And we're also gonna add some ground black pepper, just a little bit. I like the pepper flavor on my fries. It's so good. Got that. And then just a little extra drizzle of olive oil right on top of the potatoes. So now we're gonna bake these in the oven. So 425 for about 35 to 40 minutes. Depends on your oven as well. So I like to actually put a timer for 25 minutes, flip them, and then bake them again just to finish it off on the second side. But yeah, they look so good. When they come out of the oven, we're gonna top it with some beautiful cheese curds. I'm so excited. As well as turkey gravy, which I'll show you how to make next. Get these in the oven. So while our potatoes are baking, we are going to make our turkey gravy to go with the poutine potatoes. All I did was roast the turkey bones in the oven with some onion, carrots, and celery. Then I put it into a pot, covered it with water, and cooked it for like 4 hours on the stove. It is a bit labor intensive, so if you don't want to make your own turkey stock, you can definitely just buy some from the grocery store, or you can just use chicken stock instead. That totally works for this recipe as well. And I also took the extra little step of reducing the turkey stock just to really concentrate that turkey flavor and make the gravy extra delicious. So that is always such a good step. All right, so I have a liter of my turkey stock coming up to a simmer here on the stove. And I also have 3 tablespoons cornstarch that I mixed with 3 tablespoons of cold water. So it's a nice cornstarch slurry. And I really like to use cornstarch for my gravy. Sometimes we have folks that are gluten-free that come over for Thanksgiving, so I want them to be able to eat the gravy, but also it's a lot quicker and easier than having to make a roux with flour and butter and cook that, and it's a whole production. And then I'm going to whisk and drizzle that in. Hopefully not get it everywhere. And like instantly it thickens up. So now I'm adding 2 more tablespoons of cornstarch slurry into here. That's better. I can feel it instantly. Oh, look at that. You can see it's nice and like thick and viscous. That's exactly what we want. Once the gravy is thickened up, I'm just going to turn it to low, and then we're also going to add the turkey drippings that we got from the pan earlier. This will help to improve the flavor of the gravy and turn it a nice dark brown color. And then we'll keep the turkey gravy off to the side over low heat while we prepare our final dish. Now we have our beautiful potatoes now all laid in our bowl, and we are going to add our cheese curds. I am so excited. We got some local cheese curds here, and they are so delicious. Of course, you obviously have to put these on when they're hot because we want the cheese to melt. So just like that, the gravy is hot. It's beautiful. So we are going to spoon this all over the potatoes. Wow. Look at that. Oh my gosh, I'm going to put so much gravy on this. So you can serve it in a big dish like this, but if you want your guests to kind of make their own poutine, you can just kind of have all the elements out and then have them arrange it on their plate. That also works really well too. Do you think the folks from Quebec would approve of this? I don't know, it looks pretty good to me. We're on the home stretch. We have one more side dish to make, and we are making our sauteed Brussels sprouts and kale with some crispy shallots on top. It is going to be so good. So as you just saw before, I prepared the Brussels sprouts. All I did was just trim the ends and take off the outer leaves. And then I took the leaves off of some kale and I just cut them up just into nice shreds. So we have nice kind of long pieces like this. Now we can go ahead and cut this all by hand, but I have a food processor, and I am actually going to use that to slice up all of these little Brussels sprouts. So we're over here at the food processor, and I have the slicing blade attached to it. I'm going to pop that on, and I'm going to load up the feed tube. Oh. Let me do a couple at a time. Look at how easy this is. Okay, so once we have the Brussels sprouts all shredded, we're going to cook them. And I love this recipe because it cooks in like 5 minutes once you have everything chopped up, which is very helpful when you're pulling this last dish together for your Thanksgiving. So we're going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil to the bottom of a pan. Now that it's nice and hot, we're just going to add in our Brussels sprouts. Now the Brussels sprouts do take a bit longer than the kale to cook, so we're just going to saute these for about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we're going to add in our kale just at the end. As this kind of sautés, we're going to add some salt and pepper to kind of help it cook down, and obviously to season. So we're pretty much there. All we're going to do now is add the kale in at the end. So kale goes in, and we just want to kind of wilt that down and warm it up. I love the beautiful color of the bright green Brussels sprouts and the deep green kale together. Just looks super beautiful. For the seasoning, we're going to add some apple cider vinegar, just about 2 tablespoons. You want to bring a little bit of acidity to this. Then I'm also going to add about a tablespoon of maple syrup just to add a little bit of sweetness. And then I also have my crispy onions. We're going to use most of this for the top, but I am going to put a little bit in the actual dish right now. And that'll kind of give it a little bit more flavor, and we'll distribute it kind of more throughout the dish. And you can make your own crispy onions, but I just buy them in a jar from the store. Really easy, and they're so delicious. So that is our last dish. Now let's plate this up with everything else. Whew, all right. So we're just gonna pop this in the bowl and serve it up. And for me, this recipe is really inspired by BC because it's healthy, it's vegetarian, just kind of like how people in BC, you know, like to live the very healthy lifestyle, which is lovely. But also, I think like Brussels sprouts are just super popular here. Basically every restaurant you go to, there's some sort of Brussels sprouts dish or appetizer on the menu. So yeah, I was like, is Brussels sprouts becoming a BC thing? I don't know. But of course, Brussels sprouts are also a seasonal ingredient. They're available throughout the fall and winter. So it's a great seasonal recipe with a little bit of a BC flair to it. This looks so good. Beautiful, stunning. Look at how good that looks. Oh my gosh. And of course, for the final garnish, we need a little bit more crispy onions. So we're just gonna sprinkle those over top. And that, to me, I think really finishes off the dish. Have the nice soft vegetables and then the crispy shallots on top. Absolutely perfect. All right, now that that's ready, we can feast. Everything is done. And that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching me make my Canadian Thanksgiving feast, including my beautiful main and all of my side dishes. I cannot wait to dig into this. As always, if you want to make any of these recipes that I cooked today, you will find the full recipes with measurements and directions on my website, and I'll leave that linked in the description box below. Additionally, if you missed my previous appetizer video for Canadian Thanksgiving, make sure to go back and watch that, and I will also leave it in the description box below. You start out with those beautiful bannock bites and then enjoy this beautiful feast. It is like perfection. Stay tuned for next week because we are making our Canadian Thanksgiving dessert to go along with this beautiful meal, and we're going to be cooking up a delicious and decadent maple butter tart pie. Now, you definitely don't want to miss that, so make sure you hit the red subscribe button down below. And also, if you're looking to cook more locally and seasonally or some really fabulous Canadian recipes, pick up a copy of my cookbook, Season and Serve, a cookbook for all seasons. It is filled with the best seasonal recipes that you'll return to year after year. There's also some really great Canadian recipes in this cookbook as well. I have a fabulous tortilla recipe in here in the winter chapter, and it is just amazing. So if you're looking for a new cookbook to enjoy, or you want to give this as a gift to someone who really likes to cook, definitely get a copy of this on my website, and I'll also leave that in the description box below. And finally, if you're looking for more seasonal living content, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok as well. Anyways, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to enjoy the best of the season every day.